Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Again, this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest, I'm Bruce Broussard, your host. In fact, it's not. It's the what was it, the National Football League? Is that what it is?
Super Bowl Sunday.
It's a Super Bowl. That's what is that what we're doing, Dan, today?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. The monitor's not on, so I can't tell.
It's not on yet? Where's the monitor? The monitor is not on in here. Can somebody help us out real quick? Good. This is community television, folks. We know how to do it, man. Trust me, big time. Okay, fine. Well, tell you what. This is a very special one. I'm sure they've got the game is going on right now. I'm trying to get myself together, whatever. But the bottom line is that this is, by the way, this is Black History Month. Black History Month is the month start February. So this is kind of like inclusive of all of this piece. And so the show will be kind of sort of designed such that we've got a major election here in the city of Portland. We got the city of Portland, and we got the city of Portland and Multnomah County, both in this particular area. And this is the largest city in the state of Oregon. And so consequently, we're going to be getting a batch of new leaders. We've got 4 seats on city council. Actually, we got 5 new people. That's the entire, because Joanne Hardesty, who just recently won a runoff in her seat on the city council, is there. But so in all due respect, we're going to have 5 new people, and I might say there's a sitting mayor. He's running also. And so, but he's running for office, but he's a sitting mayor, and he's been there a short while, 4 years, and he's still OJTing from my particular perspective. But the fact of the matter is, we're going to have a fresh new board, and at the same time, the county basically will sort of like together in this on aspect of it. So we got that deal. So what we're going to do is that I might add one more other point, and that is the fact that March 13th is the date when everything closes, and we'll know exactly what candidates are going to be running on both the county and the city. So we need to know that too. But so what we're doing is that we're still lobbying to get more people to run. We're still looking for good leadership. We want that discussion, if you will, about the issues here in the city of Portland. So it's very, very important. So today I've got Dan Meek here, who basically sort of leads the whole issue of the Portland and Oregon campaign finance, kind of a camping deal, and he'll go through that definition just briefly in regards to what that meant, how we got to that particular point. And then we got Seth Woolley, and he was very much involved in that whole program of putting that whole piece together. And he just happens to be running for a city council also too, and and he's got some points he's going to be making. He's going to join this conversation. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to sit back and allow them to basically communicate with you within this next 30 minutes, and then I'm going to bring in another guest because of Black History Month, and we're going to talk about a local issue here, the Jeremy Christian case aspect of it. But the bottom line is that we're going to have this person who's going to talk. And again, it's all in regards to Black History Month here in the beautiful Rose City of Portland, Oregon. Okay, good. So we're just going to get right on into it. Dan, how you doing?
All right, I'm ready.
Good. Seth, you doing fine?
I'm great.
And by the way, you guys just be open to one another. If he needs a little help, I'm sure Seth, you'll jump right on in.
Oh, I think he knows everything.
Except for the data. You're the data man.
Oh, he's the data man. Man. Okay, let's do it. Dan, you're on.
Okay, I've got some slides to go along with this. The first one is just the logo of the organization that has been pursuing campaign finance reform in Oregon over the past several years as its only function, Honest Elections, and it's at honest-elections.com.
Okay.
And pretty easy to remember, honest-elections.com. I'd like to, before talking about the main topic, I think, which is enforcement of the limits on campaign contributions that Portland voters enacted last year by an overwhelming vote of 87.4% yes. I'd like to divert for a second to what's happening at the state legislature. We have, in even-numbered years like this one, we have a one-month session of the state legislature. Used to meet only once every 2 years. Now it meets every year, but in the even year, it's a short session. And a lot of things can be done in the short session very, very quickly. In fact, all bills that are going to be supposedly passed have to be heard, have to have their public hearings in the first week, which is this week, starting on Monday. Of course, the Senate and House Rules Committee can do whatever they want. They can introduce bills at the last minute with no public notice and no hearing, and they frequently do that. But at least you have a little bit of public notice about what's going on. The Oregon legislature, of course, has never adopted limits on political campaign contributions. They have repealed them 4 times in the history of Oregon, voter-enacted limits. That's one of the reasons why Oregon, in a national study of anti-corruption by the Center for Public Integrity, ranks a giant F, and in fact, according to the next slide, Oregon has the worst system of regulation of political campaign finance of any state other than Mississippi. Next slide, please.
Put your chair over there.
Where is it? There it is. We're the worst in America on campaign finance reform, except for Mississippi. So we haven't been, we public interest folks haven't been doing a very good job because we're still way, way down there. What's happening at the Oregon legislature is this strange thing. If we want to go to slide 8 while we're talking about it. The Oregon voters in 2006 passed a measure. Slide 8 is what we're looking for.
Slide 8.
Passed a statewide measure to limit campaign contributions. The Oregon Supreme Court then, in 2012, decided that measure was in a state of suspension and would come into effect when either the Oregon Constitution is amended or when the Oregon Supreme Court itself, in some different case, decides to reverse a 1997 case, Van Natta versus Kiesling. So Measure 47, which has very nice limits on political campaign contributions for all races in Oregon at all levels, statewide, legislature, and local, is in a state of suspension until the Oregon Supreme Court rules that it's constitutional or not. And that is actually happening right now in the context of the Multnomah County measure that Oregon voters passed in 2016 by 89% of the vote. That also has good limits on campaign contributions. It was challenged as unconstitutional under the Oregon Constitution by the Portland Realtors Association, Oregon Business Association, and the Portland Business Association. And that case got skipped up to the Oregon Supreme Court last year. We did briefing before that court and had argument on November 14th, and so the Oregon Supreme Court is now deciding what to do with it. I would expect the Oregon Supreme Court to come out with a decision sometime this spring. If the Oregon Supreme Court decides that the Multnomah County limits are valid under the Oregon Constitution, then, according to the Supreme Court, the Measure 47 limits from 2006 also become effective. Now, the Oregon legislature wants to avoid doing that. So what they have proposed now, and this is slide 10, is House Bill 4124. It was just put up on their website a couple of days ago. On the website, it says that the slide 10, the slide entitled 2020 Legislature Attack on Limits.
Okay.
Guess we're not going to get it.
Where's that slide? We get that slide there?
They'll find it and bring it back up.
We get it. We'll get it. You just keep talking.
Okay, well, on the legislature's website, it's only identified as a bill that establishes task force on political campaign contribution limits, but that's not what it does. Well, it does that. It establishes a task force to be populated entirely by choices by the members of the legislature itself, which is kind of the ultimate fox guarding the hen house. But in any event, what it really does is it delays the operative date for ballot measure 47, that was the 2006 measure that we passed, to the later of the date on which the Supreme Court issues its decision that renders it operative, or July 1st, 2021. That means if the Oregon Supreme Court decides now this spring that it's in effect, which could well happen, the Oregon legislature is saying, well, we're going to not allow it to take effect until July 1st, 2021, which gives them another full session of the Oregon legislature to either repeal it or eviscerate it in one way or another, change the limits, introduce loopholes, etc. So I am out there opposing House Bill 4124, and it would also, by the way, negate and eliminate the requirement in Measure 47
Okay.
that requires that all political advertisements for or against candidates identify the top 5 funders to the campaign.
Okay.
That is a very effective means of overcoming the influence, for example, of independent expenditures, and also allows folks to know whether a candidate's campaign is being financed by large special interests. Similar laws are in place in about 8 states. It's been in place in Washington for quite some time. It was in place in the recent elections for City Council of Seattle, where Amazon spent about $2 million to try to buy the City Council races there just last November. And other corporations joined Amazon in trying to do that. But because each of the advertisements had to identify the major funders to the campaign, all of the corporate-backed candidates lost except one. 6 out of the 7 corporate-backed candidates in the Seattle races lost. There are other examples where identifying the source of the money in political campaigns does have that effect. So if we go to slide 13, this tells you how to send your comments to the legislature.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
13 is you can send your comments in any format to these addresses, or you can find your senator or representative on slide 15. This is probably easier to use. You can just go to bit.ly or legfind, and that is a search mechanism to find your senator or representative.
Okay.
And then it'll provide that senator or representative's email address, and you can tell them to vote against HB 4124 and stop messing with the campaign contribution limits that Oregon voters adopted and want to have in effect. So that's my diversion to the Oregon legislature for this year.
Now, who's the major resistor in the legislature that if there was such, or it was a group or what?
I would say that it's the Democratic Party caucuses in the House and Senate. Of course, you would expect the Republican caucuses to be against limits on campaign contributions, but you would kind of expect the Democratic caucuses to be in favor of them.
Exactly.
But they're not.
Wow.
They came up with a bill last year, House Bill 2714, that passed the House of Representatives, but not the Senate, probably just because the Republicans walked out on the Senate, so that caused a lot of bills to fall by the wayside. But it was just more loophole than limit, and would not have in any way affected the operations of the legislative party caucuses themselves, which themselves spend millions of dollars in every election campaign to promote their candidates. They did pass, the legislature passed a bill for requiring some campaigns to identify some donors in their ads, a bill that I described as borderline meaningless. They exempted from that requirement all candidate campaigns. So if you're a candidate and you're running an ad, you don't have to identify any of your funders. And they also adopted it in a way that I pointed out at the time has gigantic loopholes and would enable anyone and any campaign and any political committee and any independent spender to completely avoid the requirements by spending $100 and spending 5 minutes on the state business registry to create a nonprofit corporation, run the money through the nonprofit corporation, the Good Things for Oregon Incorporated, and that's all you ever have to disclose under the bill that the legislature passed.
Well, then another point I would make in regards to resistors, I can remember when you guys were actually putting this piece together and lobbying in the largest city and the largest county in the state of Oregon, and it was well received, 80 percentage or more in both the city and the county. And I take it both the city county commissioners and the city commissioners and the county commissioners all voted. I think it was sort of a unanimous vote, was it not?
No.
What? Give me a break.
Kidding?
I mean, 80-some percent. They're representing the people. How did that happen? Who are you talking about?
Neither the Portland City Council nor the Multnomah County Commission ever put a measure on the ballot to limit contributions or to require that ads identify their funders. Never in history. We did it through in 2006. We did it 16. We did it through a thing called the Multnomah County Charter Review Committee,
Okay.
which is this strange thing that's in the Multnomah County Charter, adopted by voters and put it in the Multnomah
Exactly.
County Charter about 30 years ago, that has a citizen panel of 15 citizens who are not
Right.
politicians to be appointed to review the city charter and to put measures on the ballot to amend the city charter. They put the campaign finance reform measure on the ballot, and that's what passed in Multnomah County in
Right.
2016 by 89% of the vote.
Exactly.
Multnomah County then filed in court what's called a validation action, or actually an invalidation action, to invite the court to declare the Multnomah County measure, the ballot measure, unconstitutional. And their original position was that they're just going to throw this over to the court and not defend it, and so we had to rally the troops to get to the Multnomah County Commission to persuade them to actually defend in court the measure adopted
right.
by voters and not simply dangle it out there as bait. So so they did defend it. But the Portland measure was placed on the ballot not by any action in the Portland City Council, but by the collection of 55,000 signatures. So no, none of them, they have never done anything to adopt limits on contributions.
Well, who are they representing? I want to get in that discussion because we got some other things going. Seth, you brought me up to that piece in regards to who was one of the commissioners, I guess, both from the county standpoint, and all of a sudden they were in court. Who were we talking about? What was that, and where is it at this point in time?
Loretta Smith? After the contribution limits were passed in 2016, Loretta Smith decided she wanted to run for city council, but she was prohibited from running for city council except for the last year of her term. However, she wanted to do it a little earlier, and so to kind of get around that, in my view, she started collecting funds in her county account.
Okay.
And rather than file for to amend her county account to be a city account to run for city office,
Right.
these large funds started going into the city account.
County account.
Yeah, the county account, but the city hadn't yet passed limits, so but the county did. So the way the charter was amended to restrict the county accounts, it said that if you run for county or in your county account, if things go in that are large, then this creates a problem. It's a violation of the measure. So I filed a complaint regarding that, and that's been in the courts, and so we'll see where it goes from there.
Now that's been in the court, but it's my understanding maybe something has transpired lately since she is running, right?
Oh yeah.
Now what's happening on that
No,
deal?
she's running again for city commission. There was a very so she ran, got through the primary, so she was one of two people. There was Joanne Hardesty and Loretta Smith, and Joanne Hardesty won that time. So this time around, Loretta is running for Nick Fish's old seat,
Right.
which is. But this time she has chosen to use public funding.
Seen the light.
And
Saw the light of day.
yeah,
Light of day. I think it's a good idea.
and accept the limits.
Well, hey, we
that were
appreciate
passed.
that. That's a supporter. But then on the other hand, I mean, you would think it's the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And now it's my understanding there's another so-called commissioner that's sitting on Multnomah County that has said, hey, I'm not going to respect this piece.
Well, yeah, let me.
I hate to put it, you get it.
Let me start there with
What's her
chart
name?
16. Just
okay.
Lori Stegman.
Laura
start with-
Stegman.
I just want to indicate what the law is in effect. Okay, the Portland City Charter Amendment prohibits all contributions by corporations and other entities, limits a candidate to receiving only $500 from any individual or
Okay.
political committee, and requires that the 5 true largest original sources of funds be prominently disclosed on political advertisement. That's slide 16, if we can get it up there.
Okay.
The limits in Multnomah County are quite similar. Yeah, leave that one there. Also, this is the Multnomah County Charter Amendment from 2016, prohibits contributions by corporations and other entities, $500 only from any individual or political action or political committee. Now, the problem is that we have folks who are violating these limits and are claiming that they're not in effect. And we believe that they are in effect. The largest violator by far is Ted Wheeler's campaign. So if we go to slide 22, we have a listing. The first page is a listing of the campaign contributions that Ted Wheeler has received in this campaign that are in violation of the limits that Portland voters adopted in 2018. And you can see that the limit applicable to all of these folks is $500, and you can see some of them are up to $7,000. In fact, the limit on corporations is 0, but the Melvin Mark Corporation has contributed over $7,000, and the rest of these are individuals who have contributed more than $500. Typical contribution here is $5,000 or $2,500. So these are very large violations of the ballot measure. The next page are more violations of the ballot measure. And there are some corporate violations there. Kroger Inc., which is the owner of Fred Meyer, American Beverage Association, Capstone Partners, The Standard, which is an insurance company, et cetera, plus other individuals, mainly in real estate development. You will notice in both tables, most of his individual large contributors are real estate developers, and they are also giving contributions that we believe that are undoubtedly in violation of the limits. Now, on the county side, Lori Stegman is running for re-election to county commissioner.
Right.
The next chart indicates the campaign contributions she has received in excess of the limits in the Multnomah County measure since it took effect on September 1st, 2017. It includes several corporations. Once again, the applicable limit is 0, but she's taking funds from them, and she's taking larger funds than are allowed from individuals as well. On this chart, on this table, up to $1,000 from Dan Corcoran and Metropolitan Land Group. Here are in the next page are more of her contributions in excess of the limits since it went into effect. So what's going on? Why are these folks violating the limits? Well, a Portland resident, Multnomah County resident, Ron Buell, the founder of Willamette Week, by the way, filed complaints against these folks and against 2 other candidates. Is it Robert Kerfoot?
Jack Kerfoot.
Jack Kerfoot.
Who was he running for?
Well, he was running for 4, but then when number 2 opened up with Nick Fish,
Portland City Council.
he switched. Portland City Council.
Gee,
Right, and he provided last check $80,000 to his own campaign.
Yeah, if on my slides, there's one. I have one slide listing his contributions.
That's at the very end of the stack, isn't it?
Well, it's on a separate.
How much was his?
Okay.
How much was his?
The second slide there.
Okay.
So I put all of his contributions, which is the $1,000, then 30, then 40, then 35,000. So we're getting up there.
105. That's about 107,000 or so.
That he put in, Jack?
Yeah, he personally put in $106,000. But you'll notice I actually put in all of his contributions.
Okay.
So all of the ones miscellaneous cash contributions 100 or under are all of his contributions, period. Since as of this morning, he hasn't received a lot from anyone else. But basically, he's self-funding using his own checkbook, and that's Jack.
So how can these folks get away with this? Ron Buell has filed complaints against all of them.
Mm-hmm.
We should talk about Ozzy too.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, that first slide that was up there is Ozzy Gonzalez, who's also running for mayor.
Ozzy? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, gee.
Yeah. So
I gotta get it. I gotta bring him on in.
I can't even read
He and
that.
I need to talk.
so there were, I know there were a lot of. When it was originally filed, there were like 4 contributions that were in violation. But
There we go. That's bigger. That's
he's
good.
starting to rake it in. That Rick Stanley one is a Washington Camus, out of state developer. A lot of these are developers. They're linked to developers. Bernice Lopez just keeps donating $1,000 every month, so that's why she's on there a lot. No more construction companies, so you've got business groups that are not allowed, and these are just the ones over $500.
Gee.
And so why are they temporarily getting away with this? The complaints were filed against the city candidates by Ron Buell under the ballot measure that was adopted. It goes initially to the city auditor, and the city auditor says, "Oh, the limits aren't in effect because of the decision of the Multnomah County Circuit Court that they're unconstitutional." Well, in the Multnomah County Circuit Court case, no one asked for an injunction against enforcement of the law. If you don't ask for an injunction, then the law is in effect. Number one. Number two, the court, same judge, in the Multnomah County validation case, same decision, added this to that decision. And this is slide number 26, and this is a very important slide, so let's get it up there. The court said, perhaps with the passage of time and the occurrence of one election cycle under the requirements imposed by Multnomah County's charter and ordinance provisions, a further factual record can be provided for this or some future case that can illuminate the speech and governance issues implicated by the ongoing effort to regulate the conduct of elections with respect to contributions and expenditures. The important part is in bold, the occurrence of one election cycle under the requirements imposed by Multnomah County's charter. The judge clearly understood that he was not enjoining enforcement of the limits. He says we're going to have one election cycle under the requirements imposed by the charter. He doesn't say the charter, the requirements are in any way enjoined or precluded. And the same thing is true in the Portland in his decision in the Portland case. No one asked for an injunction. There is no injunction. The limits are in effect. Now, let's say that you're the Ted Wheeler campaign. You've taken in about at least $50,000 in contributions above the limits. We're now going to go to Multnomah County Circuit Court with that complaint. Ron Buell is, and ask the Circuit Court to enforce the law. Ted Wheeler's campaign can stand up there and say, well, the law is unconstitutional. You can't enforce it against me. Okay, he can attempt to defend on that ground. However, by then the Supreme Court may well have ruled that the limits are constitutional. So he's not off the hook simply because the matter of the constitutionality is in court and is not resolved and there's no injunction. The limits are still in effect, and unless a court later declares them to be unconstitutional in his particular case, he's liable for the fines. And the fines for $50,000 of unlawful contributions, the maximum fine under the charter amendment is $1 million. So you don't get to avoid the law. And you don't get to, if you're the Multnomah County or the city of Portland, you don't get to avoid enforcing the law unless you ask for an injunction from the court and you get it. And there's no injunction here.
But now, come on now, Dan. I mean, the people already spoke. 80% support. 80-some-odd% again in the county aspect of it. Who are they representing?
You mean the politicians who are violating the limits?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're funders.
I mean, exactly. I mean, in all due respect,
Real estate developers, mainly.
Yes. I mean, gee whiz. I mean, you don't see. I'm so glad that the Oregon Voters Digest. I have not seen this in the Oregonian or anything of that nature. But in all due respect, these are very serious times. We've got some very serious issues aspect of it, and they're looking for true representation of the people. And the people they're not that sophisticated enough to do this. And here's a sitting mayor talking to this while he's still sitting on the bench, making these statements. And in all due respect, I got to say that I noticed that on Facebook that he was getting something like $1.5 million on, I guess, on some kind of was it $1.5 million? Those were some of his. He was getting that check every year from some of the. Was it some from the family or something like that?
Oh, so he's an heir. Right?
Oh, he's an heir.
So
he's an heir. $1.5 million.
he has a significant amount of assets, and
Yeah,
so
right.
I think he revealed his latest tax return or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. When we saw it on the tube, that's a fact. $1.5 million. What does he need to? I mean, the contributors, and you look at all these contributors. You ask yourself the question: are they citizens of this city, of this state? What's going on? I mean, I'm asking you, and you guys are volunteers.
Well,
when
I
think
presume
about it.
he's a citizen of the city and the
He
state.
is a citizen of what?
I presume he's legally a citizen, but
Not by my standards.
Unlike some prior mayors.
Yeah, oh, yeah, right. That's the other side of the coin. Well, we're going to have some fun because I tell you, we're going to start lobbying. I think after March, and since I'm on the ballot too, I'm sure going to have to bring up this $1.5 million.
who are you running against?
Oh, Ted Wheeler.
Oh, okay.
Yes, he's got two hats. He's got a hat. He's sitting in the chair, and he's also, as an individual, running for office. He's got two hats. I represent no vets left behind. Okay, you got me, and I'm running for office. So I think that's fair. But in all due respect,
Well, the other thing is that the other question to ask is why take these large contributions from
Right.
private interests
Right.
when Portland has a generous public funding system, where if you collect a contribution of up to $250 from an individual, the city matches it 6-1.
right.
Yeah, you agree to cap your donations at $250 and not take any business, corporate.
Right,
It's
right.
just individuals. And if somebody donates between $5 and $50 or more, like if they donate $250, they'll take the first 50. If they're a Portland resident, then they'll match that first $50 up to their contribution and multiply it by 6, and then add that to a check, and it goes direct deposit right into the campaign account every a couple times a week or so.
So
at regular intervals.
If someone contributes $50 to you, that means the city writes you a check for $300. Is that right?
Yeah, so you can get 350. Or
That's not taxpayers' money, though. I mean, right?
Oh, yes, it is.
No, it's not.
yeah, it's taxpayer money.
Sure it is.
Taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to represent them, right? That's basically what it is. The
To
idea
represent
is
taxpayers.
I'm
Right.
giving you some money. I want you to do these things for me, right? But I want you to be a true leadership aspect of it, right?
Well, it's
But what about
it's
these other? What about these
taxpayers
other?
as a whole,
Is the taxpayers
as
as a whole?
opposed to taxpayers as
Okay. Okay.
as opposed to just real estate developers.
Okay, so these people who are they're not taxpayers. The one I'm talking about, the monies that are being given to Wheeler and folks like that, the ones who are violating the rules, right?
Yeah, city gets most of its money from property taxes, I believe.
That's what I'm saying. Yes.
Yeah, well, those folks are undoubtedly own property. That's
Own
most
property.
of them are in the business of owning property, so they certainly pay property taxes, I would assume.
But they're part of that 80% that signed off on this whole issue about the cap.
Well, probably not.
Yeah, the amounts in the public financing system are very generous. They were computed to be what a typical campaign might be using, but that's before the system went into effect. So there was a
Yeah.
lot of private money.
Yeah.
I'm thinking a lot of the campaigns aren't going to need that much money
Right.
once they start switching to using
Right.
public funding, and some of these, if the courts make the correct decisions, we'll start to see a reduction in how much is being spent,
Right.
and that should put a damper on what's going on. However, right now you have the private
Right.
campaigns are allowed to do it, and so you wanted to add.
I was wondering, what is the cap on public funding for any particular candidate?
So it depends on mayor or commissioner.
Okay.
So the primary and general election have two different limits, and so the commissioner limit, I think, was 250,000 and 300,000 for a total of 550,000, and then the mayor's race is, I think, about double that.
So about $500,000 in the primary, $500,000 in the general for the mayor, something like that.
Yeah, so for around $1 million, yeah.
Yeah, so that's quite a bit less than.
I think they made it like 980,000, just so it's not $1 million.
Yeah, that's quite a bit less than than successful mayoral candidates have been spending over the past several years. In the 2000 and it would have been 2016, Ted Wheeler did campaign spend over $1 million, and in I guess it must have been 2012, the three-way race.
Yeah, they each spent around $1 million.
Hales,
$1 million.
Jefferson Smith, and
Eileen Brady.
Eileen Brady. They each spent over $1 million, and I think, as I recall, not Ted, but Charlie Hale spent 1.7 million in the race.
But that was just the primary.
That was just
Oh,
primary.
yeah.
That was just primary.
So if you sign up for public funding, you do have a cap on the total amount you can spend.
But there is a
And-
provision where it can go up if the other side there's like this kind of catch-up clause.
Yeah, but if you are the favorite candidate of the corporate community, you have a real choice to make. Do I sign up for public funding and limit myself to $500,000 in the primary and about 500 in the general,
Yeah.
or do I go with private contributions and I can spend all that I want? I can collect and spend an infinite amount. So Ted Wheeler has made the choice to stick with private contributions, and based on his assumption that the limits adopted by 87% of Portland voters don't apply to him.
Well, ironically, he's sensitive to the issue slightly. He announced to the public that he was going to self-limit to $5,000.
Right, I saw that. 5,000.
And he hasn't done that either because he's taken a larger contribution from Melvin Mark in the form of free office space.
Jesus Christ.
Melvin Mark reports 7,300 in free office space so far.
But it is ironic that somebody would announce that they're going to intentionally break the law
Right.
just this much.
Well, you have to.
Just by a factor of 10.
Yeah. Well, with all due respect, I can still remember when I interviewed him when he ran for county. Remember, county chair, and I interviewed him. It was very interesting. And I should play that tape because he had no background at all. I mean, I asked him for his resume as far as involvement within the county. He had no background, so I just kind of helped him out a little bit because he was running, but I was interviewing a person who I felt had knowledge of the county. He had no knowledge, and which kind of brings up to the point of, I'll ask you guys were volunteers, when you put this piece together, aspect of it, we may have to look at the whole issue of, i.e., qualifying, if you will, to run, the kind of we're looking at, because in all due respect, there's no resumes given, if you will, when you file to run for office. These people have no background at all. So it's in the money, guys. As far as I'm concerned, if these guys want to run for office, they should just come right on out and run themselves. Or maybe change the deal and let it be a social kind of a deal when, and this is the county or whatever, a group or committee or whatever, put this piece together and come up with a package deal that really talks to leadership. So we're looking for leadership, very responsible individual. And what I mean by that, just go right down the line. You got to have a resume and maybe talk about what the issues are, right? And so when they submit these resumes, those resumes would reflect on the fact that they had exposure to the concerns. And so therefore, when they're running for office, you know for a fact that at the end of the day, someone's going to be representing that issue and not the money. Because right now it's been alleged that we'll probably have high rises all the way to 82nd. I think I might have seen that plan. But anyway, let's go beyond that particular point. So, again, how do we get out of this deal? I mean, how do you stop this stuff? Now it's so open. Beforehand, it was kind of like, behind the door.
Well, Ron Buell is going to court to enforce the limits. That we'll see if that succeeds. And then there is SJR 18, which is now going to be there's too many numbers. It's now a referendum petition 401. It will be on the ballot in November as measure something. It'll have yet another number, but there will be a measure on the ballot in November, a statewide measure, to reverse the bad Oregon Supreme Court decision from 1997 that you can't have limits on political contributions. You can't have some limits. It's not really that generic. That measure, that sending that measure to the voters was done by the Oregon legislature in the last session. They started out by saying, this constitutional amendment will only apply sometime in the future. It won't apply to anything that voters have already done.
Gee.
So we pointed out that Multnomah County and Portland voters have already enacted limits by only 87 to 89% of the vote. And so we shamed the legislature into making the constitutional amendment effective to validate the Portland and the Multnomah County measures. Mm-hmm. So that's probably that's almost certainly going to pass. I mean, we ran campaigns for the two ballot measures in Portland and Multnomah County on a shoestring and got nearly 90% of the vote both times.
Wow.
So this is a statewide measure. to allow limits on contributions, I think it will probably pass
Historically,
over
outside of
80%.
outside Portland, the campaign finance reform measures have historically done better than even in Portland. Measure 46, 47, for example.
Well, look, we as one was saying, I'll say this to the viewing public out here. We're gonna continue to do this and monitor this as we go along through the campaign, because everything closes for as far as candidates come March 13th. I think that's it. So we'll know exactly who's running for office and seeing whether or not we're going to have another listing, if you will. Okay, one last question, because I want to go on. We'll take a break and get the other part of this in aspect of it. For the county.
Oh, one other thing I would mention. In the court decision, the Multnomah County Circuit Court decision on the Portland measure, it upheld the Portland measure's tagline requirements. That's the requirement that every ad identify the top 5 funders to the campaign. So at an absolute minimum, the Ted Wheeler campaign, every ad, every billboard, every brochure, everything is going to have to name his top 5 contributors and the businesses that they are engaged in.
Oh, so we'll have this right on.
So, right, he's going to have to. Let me find it. He's going to have to identify at this point Robert Warren, a manufacturer of forklifts, Robert Walsh of Walsh Construction, Novena Bricks, the wife of a barge company owner, Peter Bricks, the owner of a barge company, Mark Madden, real estate development, the American Beverage Association, Kroger, etc. So there's no way out of that one. His ads are going to have to list the top 5 funders.
Wow.
And that's absolutely clear.
And then you got another entity that's going to be actually putting those names out and letting the people know when they get those ballots. I mean, when they get the voting ballots in the mail.
No.
Yeah, there's another person there. There's another entity that's going to be putting those names down and telling people who not to vote for. See, you got me?
No.
Oregon Voters Digest.
Oh.
That's what we're doing today. You got to remember that
There'll be a TV show.
There's going to be a TV show like it's going now, live. And this is going to be repeated on an ongoing basis. And we're just going to listen. And you guys are going to have to come back up and just refresh it again, a refresher course,
right,
so to speak. You got me? But just briefly, I was just going to ask just briefly, and then we're going to go to this next situation, is that in the county, did not all the commissioners, including Kafori from Multnomah County, signed off on this deal and you said, okay, fine, they supported the efforts that you guys were making when we first put that piece down?
No.
Did they vote on that at all?
No.
I thought they voted on that situation. Did they not?
Wasn't there
that a discussion? I think wasn't that a discussion and all of a sudden they all signed up?
There was like public statements
A
made.
public statement, but wasn't it all positive?
No.
No.
Nothing?
Well, they make statements, we love campaign finance reform, and then they require a tremendous amount of public pressure just to defend the law in court.
So that was it. They stopped it right there.
Well, they
must have missed
are
something.
defending the law in court.
So
it contradicts. While they're defending the law in court as constitutional, their own director of elections is saying, "I'm not going to enforce it because it's not constitutional." Same thing. Same thing with Portland.
Christ.
The Portland city attorney is at the Oregon Supreme Court saying
Jeez.
that the Portland measure is constitutional, but then the city auditor says, "I'm not going to enforce it because it's not constitutional."
Jesus,
well,
the city auditor's
attorney is saying that it's constitutional.
Jesus Christ. Well, folks, as you can see, we've got work to do, and we definitely don't have the representation of our elected officials. You can pretty well know this. And we're just trying to clean it up. In all due respect, we're City of Roses. We're just trying to clean it up. We've got swamps right here within our own city and within our own county. In all due respect,
You're going to drain them?
Well, yeah, we're going to drain the swamp. In fact, I'm picking up my platform as we go here. Okay, but look here, folks. You got to understand. This is going to be a repeat. Tell your neighbors. Tell all of the folks that you know within your particular community to look at the show. There will be a rerun on this piece. You saw the schedule. You'll see the schedule. And please get back. And then we're going to get back to you. You're going to have these guys. They're going to give us an update. Hopefully we'll get Ron Buell and all of these guys sitting right here. We just happen to have one guy that's sitting at the main table, and that's Seth because he's running for city council. I want to make sure I give him a good plug, because he's right here, and we're going to ask the other candidates, all the candidates. I'm inviting all the candidates to come and interview and then maybe you can give your feel for what we're doing here. Please, we need you. This is about representation of the people. As I heard it, I've always maintained that it's supposed to be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. I don't know where that went. Maybe I'm missing something. Dan, you did a good job. You will be back. Can we
I'll
do
be
that?
back, and if we can put up the first slide again so people can know where to go for more information. that
Sounds
would be
good.
very
Let's put that first slide on there real good. Put that first slide, and we'll run that again at the end of two.
helpful. Okay.
Okay, we'll take a short break. Let's keep that first slide on while we're taking this short break for my next guest. Okay? All right. Let's put that first slide on, and we'll just go on and take a break, and I'll bring my next guest on, and we'll go from there. And I'll get back with you guys.
You are watching Oregon Voters Digest. This program can be seen again on these channels on these dates and times. Tell a friend. Hey, look, we're back, folks. Again, this is community television. We got so much information we're trying to share with the people, and I'm talking about the fact that there's so much going on around us. And all due respect, we're just trying to be. I'm just trying to be right. It's just what's right. It's what's right. And the majority of us, in all due respect, the viewing audience, the majority of us, we're not sitting at these major tables. And trust me, economics is the economy is I mean, the inclusion of folks who are actually in the economy that actually puts this piece together. I'm talking about the folks who build the buildings and things of that nature. That's a necessity. They're providing jobs and wages, and that's America. No problem. I believe in free enterprise, but this is not right. The whole idea of government is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And the majority of the people are excluded, if you will, in terms of selecting our elected officials. It's not about money. It's not about buying a seat. You got to buy. It's buying for the total community. We've got to straighten this up, folks. It's a sad note aspect of it. And now just my last point on this last show we got a situation. We got a mayor running for office, and then now you can understand and you can see where I'm coming from. Is that he's not spending the time
actually talking to the people and dealing with the issues here in Portland right now. He's actually running for office while he's sitting in that seat. So he's not really giving anything other than the fact to say, look here, that's money. In fact, well, I can go on that piece aspect of it, but in all due respect, so I would say to that select group of folks, you can make billions of dollars as far as I'm concerned, but it is a people's government. It's not an individual's government. In fact, you can see it from a national perspective. We're having the same problem there to a certain degree. But I'm talking about Portland, Oregon. We got some major issues here. We're looking for good, solid-ish leaders. And right now, the people who are running, the actual individuals that are running, in all due respect, haven't shared their resumes. They haven't shared their resumes. We need to make sure that these folks who are going to be representing us, in fact, have some idea of what the issues are. And we should be spending that time on that. And those folks who are supporting those, you're not being fair. You need to be fair, folks. Trust me. You need to be fair. And I recognize some of those names. Yes, I was a registered Republican. And because of that, in all due respect, now I'm a non-affiliated voter, but I'm a Lincoln Republican. And that Lincoln Republican means something, because that's history of black slaves that came here and did all kinds of struggles to make this country and the livability of this country. And we don't recognize that because we don't teach it in schools. Okay? And it's some of these same folks that are sitting down here listening, putting monies in these campaigns to prevent the education of us as a whole. We are a melting pot. It's all of us. So anyway, on that note, that's the introduction to this next guest that we have here. It is Black History Month. And yes, black lives do matter. All lives matters. American lives matter. It's all of us. Immigrants. We're all immigrants. But in all due respect, blacks basically came here as slaves. They weren't immigrants.
Come on, brother.
I mean, let's get it down. Let's get it down, folks. And so if you want to vote for me, you can vote for me. But this is not a political campaign that I'm making sitting in this seat. It's a seriousness aspect of it. I'm not going to buy the campaign, nor do I want your dollars to buy a campaign. It's what's right for everybody. It's all of us. It's the United States of America. And when you listen to that Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, it'll tell you something. Just think about what you're saying when you're making that pledge. It's for all of us. And I spent my time in duty and now fighting so that you can be free. All right. Well, anyway, I got on it off a little note.
No, brother, I share your passion in this subject matter. You know, this show that you had today is probably one of the most important shows at this time that we could ever be watching. And when you mention kicking off Black History Month and you mention the work of the slaves, these lazy, resourceful contributors are trying to stack the deck beyond the inheritance that they received of the free labor. And so it's sad, but I'm glad you're bringing it out.
Okay, I appreciate that. And unfortunately, we took a lot of time on that front end. I hope you understand. But you will be back because Black History Month is the entire February.
I tell you, the time was
So
well spent, dear brother.
I appreciate that.
If we could tackle it next week a little further.
Yeah, next week we're gonna be doing.
But I tell you, there's another grave issue.
Okay. We got a good 5 minutes. I'm gonna let you talk.
Okay.
And then we'll go from there. And remember, he's gonna be here next week too. Okay, go on.
Well, I just wanted to come on and to inform the people about the Jeremy Christian case, because we're 3 years since that incident has taken place, and that is being tried. And we just finished the first week of that trial. And right away, we see some grave, systematic things that are taking place where the relationships and the double standards for policing is allowing very, very dangerous men to continue on a tirade that is being shown before the world, yet nothing is being done about it. And there are many rules that have to be followed in covering a case like this. But if you all are familiar or not familiar with the max stabbing cases, is what this case has been coined, where a man, Jeremy Christian, he attempted to stab 3 men, but 2 lost their lives, and one, Micah Fletcher, escaped that assault.
And we had Michael on the show here, by the way.
And
We had him, so good.
That's
For your
very good
background.
because it's very difficult to get in contact with him now.
Yes, he is. Yes,
Because
he
it
is.
has been, the story has
Yes.
been spun.
Yes.
And the coverage on the story is not doing the trial justice at all. And major news publications, I won't mention their names and the reporters' names who are reporting on this cases, but we're sitting in the courtroom together. And when I come home,
So
from
local
the-
news were there.
local news is there. They're trading who covers what. The first week, which we just finished, it was KATU who was covering it. This week, it's my understanding it's supposed to be KGW. And they're making it very difficult for the press pool to receive the video, because the video is in the hands of the news stations who cover it. And you are supposed to have full access to the full video of the trial
And you've been
as
there?
press.
And you've been there?
Oh, yes, sir. I'm there as press covering that case.
Okay. Okay.
So you have to have your press credentials to cover that case in that manner. And so that's why I want to be very careful, not mention names and to not overstep the rules
got
and the
you.
boundaries. But I cannot stress enough how important it is that we accurately report what is taking place in this trial, because it is being revealed that the Portland Police Department could do a more responsible job when they encounter dangerous white men, Caucasian men, and how they will not engage or apprehend or detain white men, even when they have threatened public transportation supervisors verbally, and even when supervisors are asking the officers to apprehend this man. But this officer decided with his own discretion that it was not safe for him to apprehend Mr. Christian the night before
Never saw that, yeah.
when he assaulted one of our sisters. And something else that has to be put out here is that that man was targeting black women. He targeted Demetria Harris the night before on the MAX train. He targeted her. There were brothers, there were black men on that train. He was not engaging any of those men. And then the next day he was allowed to get on the MAX and murder 2 more men who came to the aid of 2 sisters that he began to verbally abuse on the train. And this is something that these deaths could have been prevented.
Wow, wow. Well, yeah, folks, we got about 30 seconds left at this point in time. I've got enough time to say to you, please tune in next Sunday, and then this way we'll give the gentleman here that's with us, and we'll discuss this issue, if necessary, for the entire hour. And we'll just go on and just really get it down right, because it's very, very important. We want to make sure this doesn't fall into something where it's being anti one way or the other. So thank you very much for being with us. It's a very serious deal. Enjoy your day. Again, recognize Black History Month, and we're going to be part in doing this for the whole month. Take care. Have a good one. See you next week.